It is described as the lender of last resort. So if it posts more than 15 billion Ghana cedis operational loss in a financial year, should that be a concern for all of us or not? What would this loss mean when it comes to its relationship with government in terms of lending, buying government bonds, and should now government fast-track that process of recapitalizing the Bank of Ghana? Well, on PM Express Business Edition, we take the story further, look at the impact on the larger economy when it comes to government finances and even the taxpayer, as you explore the impact of Bank of Ghana's 15.6 billion loss in 2025 on the larger economy. What would that mean for the bigger economy going forward? The taxpayer as well, or for someone who has been there and is now having the ear of the President of the Republic of Ghana, Honorable Seth Terkper. He is the former Minister of Finance and now the Presidential Advisor on the Economy. He will be my guest in studio as we move the discussion away from the whether it is wrong or right, whether the Bank of Ghana is solvent or not, the impact on the economy in relation to the government finances. All these things are going to be wrapped up on PM Express Business Edition as we look at the loss the Bank of Ghana, operational loss it posted in 2025 and how that could impact on the larger economy and government finances here on PM Express Business Edition. Right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we look at Bank of Ghana's operating loss for last year and how does this mean for the larger economy, especially in relation to government finances. There's talk about government recapitalizing the Bank of Ghana, an agreement being reached to recapitalize the Bank of Ghana. It started to be in tranches to 2022. With this loss and this issue about solvency, should that be fast-tracked? What would that mean, or what would this also mean for the taxpayer as well in terms of whether indeed Bank of Ghana may have to fall on government or not, or still they are in a position to actually manage their finances as a bank of last resort? What could be the implications on government bonds in terms of Bank of Ghana buying these bonds and all those? So let's just do a quick recap of these issues in terms of the numbers. Then we get to our guest in studio, the Presidential Advisor on the Economy, Honorable Seth Terkper. He has the ear of the President. What do you be telling the President when the President should ask him that, what should we do to the Bank of Ghana for this loss or not? And so let me just recap these things in terms of trying to let the viewers appreciate why we got here, what does the Bank of Ghana say, and what would this mean for us in terms of larger economy. So in terms of us looking at what the Bank of Ghana, so if you try and push back to where we're coming from in terms of the loss, somewhere in 2022, they had a loss of about 60.88 billion. Now, fast forward to 2025, we still had a loss of 15.6. Profit from the sale of Ghana's gold. If you remember, somewhere in November last year, the Bank of Ghana had to sell a fraction of its gold reserve. They made some revenue of, even profit of 9.5 billion Ghana cedis. So the net gain, as you've seen there from the sale of gold, refined gold, you've seen those numbers there. Would Bank of Ghana have been policy insolvent without the sale of gold? That's a question many people are asking as well. Yeah, so Bank of Ghana's low position minus the profit from the gold of sale is looking at somewhere around 33 billion Ghana cedis. So look at the equity position of the Bank of Ghana in terms of trying to compare the liabilities and as well as in terms of losses or liabilities and also assets as well from 2022, 2023, and 2024, and now in 2025. So reasons for and what the Bank of Ghana said as in why they are in this position. Well, it's coming from its open market operations. Every central bank around the world deploy these several instruments in trying to manage liquidity. And for that open market operations where they had to issue bonds and mopping up and all the rest, it cost them some over 16 billion Ghana cedis. The gold purchase program, where they had to look at building their reserves as well. You saw the loss there. Foreign exchange losses as well. That has also been explained. That these are the things the Bank of Ghana said it did. And that is why it went so low with its losses. So reasons for the Bank of Ghana's loss, the open market operations, you've seen the numbers over there, as well as the gold purchase. Look at the situation in 2024 and what happened in 2025. And also reason for the Bank of Ghana's loss in terms of the forex losses as well. And these numbers are there for all of us to see as well. So inflation is inflation of 5.4%, then exchange rate of 10.45, the national reserves of 13.8, and the lending rate of 20.45. And these are the end year indicators of these numbers. So let's get back into our studio and engaging the presidential advisor on the economy. He has the ear of the president as well. And I think that I stand to be educated. Honorable, one of your ministerial positions, you served on the board of the Bangkok. I stand to be educated. So this thing doesn't come to you as new in terms of the finances from the perspective of a deeper appreciation of the issues or being there before and what the Bank of Ghana has gone through. And I stand to educate, Honorable, right?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good evening to your viewers and listeners. Yes, I did serve on the board of the Bank of Ghana, when I was a deputy
minister of finance.
Yes, of finance.
I mean, for you, again, you were out, studying there.
And by the way, and earlier in my career, before I left the country and came back, I was also among those who attended OMO during the PNDC era.
The open market operations, is it the committee, right? That looks
at committee, yeah, that's right. I was one of Minister of Finance staff who attended.
When you sat back and you when the results was released for all of us to hear, and maybe you might have had a preview already. For you, did it come to you as a shock, or it was expected because of what the Bank of Ghana had to do to try and keep things at low level?
I think if you took things with a 2-year perspective, it might look surprising, and especially given the fact that, the government had been, working very hard, not just on the monetary that we are talking about now, but very hard on the fiscal, suspended debts, repayment of some of those debts, defaults, corrections, which, by the way, led to more positive results like the ratings, that we see. Then, yes, it looks like things were looking good. BoG was also, implementing its core mandate, which is to bring stability to the economy. And that is what we are discussing here. Mm-hmm. If you consider that the loss that we are talking today, 15 billion, against the background of what is positive performance, was 60 billion in 2022 when our problem started. 60 billion. Mm. So we're talking about 3 times. So the previous government, for example, and its, those representing their achievements, in quotes and the rest, we need to remind him that around about this time, in 2022, government was being heavily financed. Mm. Well, of course, there's a COVID background and the rest, but as I've always pointed out, there were significant inflows also coming in. Mm. And so then goes into 2023, and it was 13 billion, close to the 15. It tapered. But by the time it tapered into 9.4 or 9.5, billion, which is 2024, which is what is being compared. Recall that we had gone into the fund program. We had done, we had gotten reliefs, from the fund itself, from the bank and from others. And we're well into the 3rd review or so, of the... So I think it's important to put this in context. The second point I'd like to... Yes, to know where we're coming from. So we are coming from, 4 times improvements in performance, even though negative. But let me just also say that this is when you talk about this loss of 15 billion, you are talking about, items like the regular depreciation of the bank's assets. Of course, the eye-catching one was the movement in the exchange rate. But remember, reserves are still strong, and reserves came in handy as a result of, again, putting some discipline into the way, we marketed, gold, which was a kind of free for all and a value addition. And so if you put that in context, then you will see that when you take the activities that are taking place and the cash flow, which BoG's, was holding at the end of the period that we are talking about, it's actually a positive 51 billion. And that is why the governor is saying that, we were executing our mandates, because the economy had been monetized significantly and we had to do significant mopping. So it's true that we were doing well. It's true that we were holding. And this is partly the cost of stabilizing the cedi, enhancing its value. Is a cost of providing, for example, forex for the fiscal element of paying down, our suspended debts, including for which we had to do, and the outcome, a second outcome, one would say is, we returning to the domestic bond market. Let's not forget so soon that we were locked out of that market for the last 3 years. So I think one needs to look at, maybe the government is a victim of its own, success, but then you have to look at the activities that it was involved in and where we are now in terms of rating, in terms of returns, returning to the domestic bond market, the potential of returning to the external bond market, and, performing well on the various indices under the IMF program.
But Honorable, you mentioned the IMF program. I mean, going through several reports, including the World Bank, the IMF, and even independent reports. I get you when you try to let us understand that, let us appreciate where we are coming from. But these same reports did project that we were on that path to recovery.
Yeah, but the gap.
I know, and that is where you go back to the 60, but 2025.
No, but
if the previous government was still in power, some would say that we could maybe have still gotten to this level. So even though go back is not good, we were on that path of recovery to get things done.
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure about that.
Okay.
Because remember, with debt suspension, and despite the flows, we hadn't liquidated, we hadn't, begun to pay off, even in a modest way, the debt that was suspended, which we had to, come in quickly to handle. And the other aspect which, one needs to know is that when you talk about the cash flow from operating activities being a positive, of 51.3 billion, you are comparing it to, the highest was in 2023, positive of 28, which went down in 2024 to 17, and it was actually a negative at the peak of our problems, at about 5 billion. So I think it's, if you look at things in the context, I understand the shock, and that's why I'm saying that, there could be a negative at all, but a negative is one item resulting from, correcting the economy. Yes, the equity position, as you pointed out, is also, but when you have these losses and you net them off, and mind you, the netting off did not start today. So if you project, the equity position of the bank, it has been deteriorating, for a very long time. And we all know that. Right, so if you did all of that, then you have to look at the numbers I'm giving, the path we've been following, and a virtual, more than doubling, of, the net cash operating,
What do you tell those who might argue that maybe we were too aggressive in our mopping up, in our liquidity fights, and that is why maybe we've got our hands bent to this level?
No, I don't.
We are taking our time with this liquidity mopping and everything. maybe we wouldn't have seen this hole,
you remember,
this equity situation as a lender of last resort.
You remember that we had said that we were not going to be part of, the program that was being put in place, during the global financial crisis, which, was led by the IMF and the World Bank and others. We rebuffed it completely. We said it openly that we were too proud a nation, to go into those programs. Subsequently, we had to suspend our debt payment and we defaulted. And domestically, we faced, a haircut, right? Now, if you ask for the slow approach, remember, I don't want to be too specific, but there are countries, including African countries, that adopted that approach. There are countries like Sri Lanka and others in the Asian, region, which adopted a slow approach, and in Africa, some of them are still 10 years on, struggling. So the point is that when you are hit with a shock, you have to do something about it. And mind you, this is monetary. But remember that this was the same strategy, which was adopted on the fiscal side when we started building the buffers after the single spine, after HIPIC, remember? And we said never again. And where we are here, we were with the default. Remember, we started using oil to build the buffers and the stabilizers, which were destroyed. And it's the reason we went into this abyss. Now, if you don't climb out as quickly as possible, right, let me make that first point. If you don't climb out as quickly, as possible, and knowing very well, the situation with Zimbabwe and other, which took the milder approach. And more recently, I think 3 days ago, I heard on your own show, BBC, Senegal, having some difficulties now because of, again, they were part of the, the earlier correction, but their program had been suspended. So I would say that, the deep difficulties which we face require, that, we applied, the bitter pill as quickly as possible.
You don't
get
think
the
that
economy out. Of course. What's the outcome? The outcome is, as I said, ratings, from junk to B minus, getting to B plus, B minus first. We got out of the junk situation, moved into B minus, and heading towards B plus. 2, we were able to clear. And mind you, part of what we are talking about here, which involved the use of Forex, and by the way, one of the positive things that happened, which is the appreciation of the cedi itself, meant that any assets held by the central bank, were being held not at, the dollar equivalent.
So I get from you that it was, the Bank of Ghana was justified in being this aggressive in all the things that they had to do.
In complementing the same aggressive posture by the fiscal. Remember that the Minister of Finance, was, quick on his heels, in going to China, going to France and all those, which permitted it. We were at the point where, we would probably have ended up like Senegal and the program would have been suspended. So the sort of aggressive posture that you see, right, on the monetary side, was a complementary effort. And at the same time, remember, we had to be investing. Whether some costs, obviously, we could have paid maybe some arrears and others more rapidly. But then today, we would have, having been locked in the market, where would we have gotten the money? From T-bills for capital expenditure? We needed to get to the point where, from revenue.
Yeah,
you were running a deficit, remember? We had been running a deficit already, and we had gone into the IMF program, right? And remember that the government, today you see we're talking about some of these sales, but you forget that the central bank, the same central bank we are talking about, had to come to the assistance of the government to the tune of 2.7, equivalent of $2.7 billion. I think we've forgotten those days. We were parroting those numbers in the past. So that is the sort of situation. That's the abysmal position. We wouldn't be junk. We wouldn't have suspended. We wouldn't have defaulted. George, that's the point I'm making.
I get you. I have followed the communication post the release of these financials from the politics and from the institution.
No, I had been talking about these numbers during COVID.
Yeah, I know, but I get the sense the end justifies the means, or what they say, the economy is stupid, or listen, it's about the bottom line.
No.
So if I'm a businessman and I'm very shrewd and I do everything, and at the end of the day, as investors or shareholders, I post about 300% jump in profits. It's about the bottom line. We shouldn't care about what has been done to get there. And therefore, let's celebrate that, the economy is now in a good position, the city has stabled, and all those things. Do you share in that?
Maybe a dose of what private sector does. So I have no doubt that the reason, the
economy is
multimedia. The reason multimedia remains strong, through COVID, when adverts were going down and all that, was a certain strategic, change, response to the situation that was confronting it, right? So I'm saying that if it is good for households, if it is good, if the strategy is good for business, it must be good for government. And I've just compared, again, at the risk of repeating myself, what we have done now, compared to what. But this is not new, please. This is not new. Under President Mahama and earlier, President Mears, you saw the speed with which, we moved under my former boss, Dr. Dufour, in tackling single spine. As quickly getting out of the way as quickly as possible, because it was, a killer of a fiscal, measure, right? Of course, I'm not saying everything was not negative, because there was some motivation with, the public servants or civil servants who were not being paid well. But it's led to a very serious situation. And you know that we moved in quickly back then, to do a correction. It was epic. So I'm saying that, yes, the so they're moving in very quickly with fiscal measures, with monetary, complemented by monetary measures, and real sector. Remember, investments in real sector, in the social, sector, right? At the same time, it requires a delicate balance. But your main problem is that, George, you are defaulted, right? Your main problem, George, is that you could not go to your own domestic bond market to borrow. Your main problem was that there was a deep, lack of confidence in that market because of the haircut, domestic haircut, and pensioners and others suffering that you needed to get out of it as quickly as possible. And I'm saying that, you see, we are looking at the negative numbers, but we are not looking at the cash flow from operating activities. We are talking about the cash flow from operating of 51 billion. The reserves also being, healthy. So this one single mix of appreciation of the cedi is a mix of appreciation of the cedi. It's a mix of, repositioning, gold marketing, and it's a mix of, other things which are lit, and even conventional things like depreciation of the investments. In fact, there is the completion of the BoG, headquarters, and others are all part of these losses. So they are not just, reform-related measures. I mean, they are there.
No, but I'll come back. But I think that we also want to move forward and look at the implications on the larger economy, the implications on BoG financing itself, and even financing government bonds. There is talk about recapitalization of the Bank of Ghana, and whether, I know there's already an agreement in place, but whether it should be fast forward and all those things. The bit about what, whether they are in a strong position to buy your bonds and all those things. If I go to the finances, there's something I've seen about the zero financing being implemented to the latter and the bank of the government fiscal side. Is not actually doing that. But I'll become.
It's not new. We did zero financing before.
Well, but that is the next leg of this discussion.
Yes.
But I just want to bring in about, I think it's about 4 minutes or 5 minutes insert from the Minister of Education. You also tried to make some argument in what has happened right now. So I'll just throw that in. Let's watch this thought from the Minister of Education.
I heard him on the 6 o'clock.
Education.
I don't see
I'll come. And then, I know it's not contradiction actually.
Yes.
Let's hear his thoughts on this whole development. The Minister of Education, Haruna Iddrisu, talking about these developments.
One of the major priorities of President Mahama is investing in education and investing in human capital and workforce for that matter to spur the growth of the economy and to spur an agile public service that delivers on efficiency and a public service that is responsive to the needs of the Ghanaian people, integral to the attainment of working to improve what is generally referred to as a public good, would be investment in education and probably by extension health as the social development anchors of every country. I think that President Mahama, since his assumption of office in his first term, to his credit, have worked to stabilize the economy, and I think that the Bank of Ghana and the governor and the Minister of Finance deserve some credit. Ignore what you may call the ugly economic noises about losses from the Bank of Ghana. Yes, it comes at a financial cost to the states, but there's no fiscal risk to it yet. You recall that in opposition we're very strong on the fact that the Bank of Ghana must operate independent of the Minister for Finance and even independent of the President. But we should not lose sight of the fact that the Bank of Ghana primary role is just to achieve disinflation. No, disinflation alone is not sufficient. It's not my mandate. But recalling back what we stood for in opposition at the time, I had the rare privilege to lead the minority for 7 years. The Bank of Ghana has a primary responsibility for macroeconomic stability and to stabilize the economy and to provide for buffers when the economy is in distress. So one of the major conflicts the NDC have been working to resolve, which we must communicate very tactfully and carefully, is dealing with the MPP mess and making available for money and expenditure in areas that spurs growth. So opportunity cost. You must first sweep their mess, and then you can reinvest in areas that supports the private sector. So arguably today, you may not be happy as we are not, with the Bank of Ghana recovering losses of up to 9.6 billion, now 15.6 billion in 2025, against what was in 2024, 9.6 billion, and then 10 billion in 2023, and probably 60 billion in 2022. Now, cumulatively, what could the MPP as a government account for, even in the face of those significant financial losses and financial costs? For the NDC, with pride, we have stabilized the cedi in terms of its appreciation and depreciation against major foreign currencies. Significantly 39 to 40% recovery in terms of its appreciation. Inflation has come down from 54% to 23% to 3.3%. And then the reserves are 5 to 7 months of import cover. So the financial costs of the Bank of Ghana losses must be viewed against the economic benefit of a stable, agile economy. And if you recall the words of the President Mahama said that he wanted to build an economy with a foundation that would break a path to economic recovery into the future. That is what we must guard against.
But Honorable, some will say that
the political opposition is taking advantage to get at government, but in a way that must be sincere Sincere because 2024, 2023, 2022, fast forward, the Bank of Ghana made significant losses of a financial cost. But that did not result in a stable, agile economy as it is today. So the cost-benefit analysis favors the NDC and President Mahama and Atufo.
No, but what we say that in your time as minority, you stood up for certain principles at the time at the Bank of Ghana's laws were recorded. Some are saying that fast forward to being in government, you are softening your stand, you've changing your stand. The principle that you stood for whilst you were in opposition about the Bank of Ghana recording laws, even said that the governor should even resign and all the rest. It appears that that principle that you stood for when you were in opposition is not standing now.
Anybody who upholds principles in the morning and abandons them in the evening is not worth being described a principled person. That is not the case. I'm saying that do a cost-benefit comparative analysis of a 60 plus 10 plus 9, that's 80 billion. What was the effectiveness of it in terms of the stability of the economy, in terms of the stability of the cedi, and in terms of building sufficient reserves? Look at Iran war. Ghana is able to cope. I don't know about tomorrow, but so far so good. Compared to what other European and American countries are going through, we've done pretty well, thanks to the judgment of the Bank of Ghana in building up those reserves and converting some of those reserves into forex. But I agree with you that we should deepen transparency and accountability in terms of the operations of the gold board. I agree with you that we should deepen transparency and accountability, and then let the Bank of Ghana concentrate on holding on to the reserve, whilst gold board does the purchases. And then matters of discounts can be looked in and reviewed in order that we safeguard that it does not pose a fiscal risk to the Ghanaian economy.
So, Honorable, as we wrap up on this interview, going into an election here in terms of spending, fiscal discipline, I get from you that you are firmly committed to the President's assurance from your sector in terms of... And that is the Minister of Education, Haruna Iddrisu, contributing or wading into this whole debate about the Bank of Ghana's loss and what has happened and what has not happened. But let's get back to this today, engaging the presidential advisor on the economy. But, Honorable, there are some who said that it appears that government has left everything to the Bank of Ghana in terms of the correction. There's a limit to what monetary measures can do.
Oh, no. George, I just told you what the Minister for
Because
Finance...
again, the mopping up and all the things, it appears that everything was left on the Bank.
Yeah, but we experienced one type of mopping which ended up in...
If you were balanced, if you were supporting the Bank of Ghana, maybe the whole wouldn't have been big.
Let me repeat. The whole was big.
The whole could be that big.
Let me repeat.
The loss could have been...
No, George, let me repeat myself.
The shock could have been smaller.
No, George, I quoted...
If the fiscal side was equally committed and doing more.
And the fiscal side was committed.
Doing more?
Yes. So let me give you specific cases. We inherited a situation, and I'm repeating, a situation where government had inflicted a haircut on its own people.
Because it was necessary at that time.
Let me go through my thoughts. Let me go through my thoughts.
And inflation was coming down.
Please, let me go through my thoughts. We inherited a situation where debt was suspended and not paid. And we risk being kicked out of the IMF program with disastrous conditions. We inherited a situation where the ratings of our bonds were junk, right? We inherited a situation where, let's say, the fiscal, was just, in a mess, where inflation was high and where, you had, on the fiscal side, huge, deficit.
Oh, no, but there was some correction.
I'm coming to
the impression is that everything was gone.
No, but you are downplaying. Excuse me to say, you are downplaying, or you seem to be downplaying what the Minister for Finance was doing. The Minister for Finance moved in quickly to mop, lose government cash, which prevented the Bank of Ghana or saved the Bank of Ghana from continuing to finance government, as was being happening in
the past. And I must make the point that, the result shows that there has been zero financing.
Yes, there has been zero financing, yes.
And that's a fact.
Remember, remember, the appreciation was also a complemented, our debt repayment. Remember, I don't think we should forget so soon, the IPPs that were not paid, which have been paid, the China loans that were not paid, so, which had been paid, the commercial loans, both domestic and external, which, the payments to the pension funds and the rest, these were all tough fiscal measures because, of course, the Minister of Finance could have delayed taking those funds and just continue spending and probably deepening the woes.
Where the account...
And then let me, I'm just landing. Okay. As a result of which combination, right, of fiscal complementing monetary and monetary complementing fiscal, our ratings moved quickly out of junk to B-. And so you can't say that it was only, you can't say that the fiscal was leaving everything. You remember the minister immediately launched an audit, right? And the outcome of that audit. The sheer pruning, of overestimation of contracts, and the rest, right? As we speak, the minister announced just before the spring meetings, right, that the GIFMIS to enforce much of those disciplines, the reforms in revenue, in expenditure, because we need to sustain long-term reduction, minimization of expenditure and boosting our revenue. So there's a lot that's taking place on the fiscal, already. Payment of suspended debt, payment of some arrears alongside, the IPPs, these are all fiscal measures. Whilst at the same time, making sure that some spending was going on in the economy, and the launch of the big push, the launch of 24-hour economy, investments activities were taking place at the same time. So no, I think that it's an emphatic no to say that everything was left to the monetary.
I mean, Honorable, just a quick one. I mean, some of these payments you spoke about, and this is something that's just been pricking my mind that I want to find out that some of these payments were made sometimes 6 months into your takeover, 7 months into your takeover.
That's how fast and speedily.
And remember, that there was no reserves that was left in place for the new administration to take over and work with, because some of these monies were quite huge. So in terms of, again, the correction...
I'm talking about, yes, you were talking about the downside of what you thought was the management of the gold and others. So remember that one of the things was to move in quickly, to strengthen the reserves, which translated in appreciation, the cedi and all that, right? It's the sanitization of the marketing of gold. So I believe that, yes, you couldn't get everything right, as Haruna was pointing out, but at the same time, we need to, complement, right, the sanitization of that whole sector, which led to significant increase, in reserves for the central bank. And by the way, let me make it, another correction. Globally, gold is the most aggressive competitor for the dollar before you come to the euro, yen, and others, right? Ghana was the Gold Coast. Ghana's gold was going all the way out, to areas, and which they were using to stabilize their economy, from Middle East to Europe to everywhere. So I think we should also look at, the positives in terms of real sector, sanitization that took place, in having a licensing regime, adding value to gold and whatever. And there is nothing wrong with the central bank buying bullion, producing bullion and keeping bullion. Because after all, what is bullion? Bullion is a raw gold that has been taken out and refined. And we central banks put their stamp on, So why can't we also have a black star? After gold is gold. Excuse me, I'm saying that let's also have a black star imprint, to show up our reserves. Instead of just exporting.
Is there any connection between the compliance of the zero financing when it comes to the Bank of Ghana, government operations too. I saw that deposits also with the Bank of Ghana fell as well in terms of all those bridge financing facilities.
Part of the depletion in fiscal reserves was a result of the central bank supporting, the payment of the external loans, the suspended loan. They're in forex, so that's you can see the correlation, in what is the decline, and that's the point I'm making, that we needed to move quickly, and I think the outcomes are positive. You would agree with me, moving from junk to B+, at the risk of repeating myself. As you said, stopping the deficit financing to the extent you do zero, bringing in the TSA to stabilize and to make sure the government had resources. Nobody thought the government would have resources going into the year. Resources were depleted, but the minister moved in, doing audits and all those. So I think that we should be complimentary of the positive work that has also been done on the fiscal side.
Is it misplaced for anybody to be worried about looking at BoG's position now and the implications for buying of government bonds?
Yeah, but that is because...
I'm just asking that, educate me.
No,
is it fair for anybody to be worried that because of their operating loss?
I think as a country...
Should we be worried about the implications on government bonds, purchase of government bonds and all those things?
I'm saying that as a country, we should be worried.
I know, but I'm saying that going forward...
No, I'm saying that, please, I'm saying as a country, we should be worried and say that never again to HIPIC, never again to default, never again to depletion, never again to monetization.
Never again to a 15.6 billion loss.
Of course, but the 15, I'm just...
I get you, but I'm saying that...
I'm just saying that...
The point I'm just trying to make here is that...
Excuse me. I'm saying that even... Sorry, George. I'm saying that even the 15 billion, that is, a quarter of where the problem started, 60 billion.
But at 2024, it was 9.6 billion.
Of course, with significant influence.
So if we try to backtrack when it favors us, some would say that they immediately, when they took over, it was 9.6 billion.
Yeah, but if you took it that, by the time we took over, right, 2/3 of the IMF resources, the World Bank resources had already, why wasn't the correction, why wasn't the correction made?
Yeah.
Right? And mind you, one would say elections, but remember, that the same Mahama administration went into the elections in 2020, 2016, without monetizing, deficit was reasonable, debt was a reasonable 57% and whatever. So I'm saying that we should rather say never again should we default, and never again should the country, suffer a haircut on its citizens. Never again should we be shut out of our own market. Never. These are what we need to do. And I'm saying that, yes, the 15 is acknowledged, right? But if you look at the financial statement of the whole central bank, you see that reserves are strong.
Yeah.
You see that, yes. You see that other things are strong. So, I'm not being complacent.
So nobody should, we should not be worried about the implications.
I am not, me parroting
buying of treasury bills, government bonds and all that. That is the clarity I just want from you if any lay person on the street is asking that because of BoG's position in 2025, even though they've given us the assurance that going forward, they don't think that this will happen again because they have taken that heavy hit already. But I'm just asking that for you, being at the fiscal side, are you worried about the implications on the bonds, the treasury bill purchase, and all those things?
I am not, because you should always be cautious in every fiscal, monetary, and financial measure that you take. You should analyze the implications and the rest. But I'm saying that, one, we are operating within, a correction, the fund program. Already, both the minister and His Excellency have been mentioning, right, the need to have a successor program, as we attempted to do, right, in order that we can sustain these policies, right? The minister has mentioned this. I think he went public, with it. So let's wait for the timelines. Let's wait because it has to be done within context of the budget, right? Even if we exited the fund program, right? We have the media review coming, right? We have that budget coming.
I'll be coming.
And I'm saying I'm saying that no, I'm saying that no, the government is not being complacent. with this current government. The government is thinking about sustainability, of the because it has been painful, George. It has been painful not to be paying, some domestic arrears and the rest just because you want to do a correction, which correction has been made. And today we are back. Hopefully we'll go back with discipline, the sinking fund, debt repayment, and all those things, the buffers and stabilizers. I think that the one thing which, the U.S., Israel, Iraq, Middle Eastern war
already
is showing us.
Exchanging missiles as we speak right now.
Well, yes, but I'm saying that one of the things, it should teach us, right, is the need for stabilizers and buffers. You saw the speed with which, and even now, countries went into their stabilizers of, their buffers of oil reserves, which were keeping on the ground in tanks and others. These are yes. So I'm saying these are the very measures which we started implementing, and which, for us, would suggest that, again, you are not in control, of nature. Again, you are not in control of what will happen elsewhere. So we must go back to these measures. And I believe that when His Excellency is talking about, the need for us to move to a sustainable path. We are a middle-income country. If we get, and His Excellency mentioned it again. Remember, he said, if we get a fourth, fifth oil field and whatever, Ghana will become an upper middle income. And that means that the implication is that you are losing concessional financing, you are losing grants, right? And you are going to be borrowing, at a hybrid and others, that's rates around 6-8%. And that's why the alignment of social, those concessional financing and the rest to education and health has become very crucial and important.
You talked about never again, and there's a question about how committed is government to the never again, that going forward, the zero financing, on the fiscal side, there'll be more discipline so that Bank of Ghana may not have to come in again with any aggressive. I'm just coming because there's a fiscal contribution to this.
My appeal,
and that's when you say never again.
Yes, I'm not addressing my government alone.
Yeah,
when I say never again, I'm saying that as a nation.
Okay,
as a nation that has gone through HIPIC, right? Some other country took on the debt they forgave. They even pumped some of that money into our budget. We went on to default. And I'm saying we went on to suffer a haircut this time by our own citizens. And I'm saying that's the context in which I'm saying, we should put in measures, so that this hiccup, of positive, negative performance and whatever.
Let me read. How committed is government in supporting the monetary side to ensure that the Bank of Ghana has given us the assurance that going forward, they don't see this happening again? But I'm saying that you cannot take away the fiscal side. And that's why I'm asking you that, talking to the president, engaging the Minister of Finance, how committed is government to in supporting the monetary side when they say that moving forward, they expect things to improve so much going to this year and 2027?
Let me add a central bank to, don't forget, the entire banking sector has not, it's not out of the woods yet, with the big bang approach compared to the gradualist approach, which you were even advocating a short while ago in handling the banking sector, right? But then there is precedence. There is the banking sector crisis of the 1990s when I was starting my career, and it was the same bank, government of Ghana that gradually recapitalized the central bank and gradually, recapitalized commercial bank and others before partial privatization and others. I think we need to repeat, that. And that's the context in which the Minister for Finance and the Governor are saying that government is aware. But I'm saying that it is not, even before I go on, it is not all negative. Right.
I think, Honorable, you made that, but I still want to come back to the fiscal.
I'm coming back. I'm saying that, if we find the need to restore our ratings, if we found the need, to pay the debts as quickly as possible so that we get out of the abyss. If we find the need for us to boost reserves in order that to stabilize the currency and the rest, then it stands, firmly to reason that this government will do what it takes, both financial, monetary, fiscal, and the real sector, to restore the balance sheet of the central bank, as the governor has said.
There's talk about you, in January, you signed an agreement with the Bank of Ghana to recapitalize the Bank of Ghana. I think about, it's trying to be correct, it's 1 billion Ghana cedis. And it's
as good as signing an agreement that we will not do, that will do zero financing, and we did.
Which I must say,
and we did, and we are
go
doing.
to the 2025. Let me place this on record. It's not going to come from you.
I'm saying no.
Government indeed stuck strictly to the zero financing. That's
I'm giving you.
But I'm saying that.
Yes.
Some are saying that the agreement and the recapitalizing the Bank of Ghana is going to happen in tranches.
I'm saying it's not new.
But
I'm saying it's not
32.
New. I'm saying it's not new.
Some have said that, Honorable, looking at what happened last year, couldn't you have fast-tracked the process to quickly do this in the next 2 years?
But the Bank of Ghana was building its own reserves to do it. And remember, if you say that, we should...
I know they are doing that on their own side, but I'm saying that on the fiscal side, is it...
Just let me finish my thought. Okay. I'm saying that at what cost? The central bank was doing fairly well and stabilizing. Need we have left, the need to return to the bond market and stop using 3-month instruments to finance the capital budget? What would have been the cost of that rapid movement? We explained, to development partners and to everybody that we need to go gingerly because there are priorities that had to be met. So it was a plan, all right? And that is what we are. So having gotten the relief, right, and the bank did not collapse. The bank strengthened itself in many respects, right? And you are back to the financing your budget in a very more solid way. So you are back to, the capital budget with long-term instruments and the rest, right? You are back to your ratings. Then I think it is time to begin to think, and that's where the gradualist approach comes in, to begin to think, because you are going to be restoring the strength of the central bank whilst creating jobs, which is very important. The significant number of even teachers who were not posted, nurses that were not posted, and the rest. So, in other words, for me as an accountant, the ethos is always balance. You always have to balance. And that's where the term balance sheet comes from, right? You balance the assets, liabilities. At various times, one goes down, and you do a correction.
Yeah. But so you say a different argument when somebody says that doing this recapitalization in tranches to finally reaching 2032 to a positive position, that is too long. That's what some people are saying.
George.
Can't you do this in 2 years?
George.
I mean, 1 billion Ghana cedis, you are doing instruments and bonds.
Just
this is just even an
Let me give you a recent...
As an accountant,
let me give you a recent...
Should it be
recent,
fast track forward?
Please. Let me give you a recent example. With hindsight, would we have gone the gradualist approach with the banking sector instead of the big bang that we did?
The same big bang should go for recapitalizing the Bank of Ghana.
No, but wait a minute. It's a progressive matter. Remember, the government, has started restoring NIB. The government has started restoring what? ADB.
Issue bonds?
Yes. What?
Issue bonds and recapitalizing.
When you are locked out of the bond market?
I'm asking you.
I'm asking you.
This was not liquid cash.
No, I'm saying that.
These were instruments that was used to recapitalize. Can't the same thing be done for the bank?
You have been locked out of your capital market by your own selves. So how are you going to issue the bonds?
Okay.
With your junk status? So, in other words, we are in a better position now, hopefully with a B+ rating, and heading towards maybe, BBB or, the higher supreme, to raise that kind of capital you are talking about if your option is that we should raise, bonds, which is debt in a way. And we have to look at the consequences, because when you raise bonds to capitalize, it's debt. On the other hand, could we also wait to see the outcome of the war together with other reclamation, of the cocoa sector and others, whether we could also have raised, the funding that is required from, say, gold, cocoa, lithium, and the rest, as we have been doing. That is what being gradual doesn't mean you do not have a plan.
In Bank of Ghana's attempt to do the correction, it was a big bang. Some are saying that fiscal side, let's do a big bang.
It wasn't a big bang. No, it wasn't.
Recapitalizing Bank of Ghana now.
No.
To give them a clean sheet.
I'm saying that the balance sheet you are seeing now, which was 60 negative and is 15, right, which got fund and other resources. The bank itself, who knows, in managing, the its gold reserves and the rest, could contribute to this effort. And I'm saying that it is not as if you neglected, the central bank completely and left it to it. No. I'm saying that, one, let me give you 2 examples. The fact that the Minister for Finance stopped relying on the central bank to finance the deficit. Itself. Otherwise, otherwise the situation. Is
it fair for anybody to?
No, I'm saying the situation. Let me land.
Was an IMF program condition?
No, let me land. No.
Zero financing. Some will say the IMF.
We did zero financing.
But
I'm saying that we did zero.
Mahama too. Could it be seen as an IMF condition?
I'm saying that you can't say that everything is dictated by the IMF, because I'm saying that we did zero financing at a time when in the fund program we were allowed to do 5%. Right, so there's a precedent. So I think you must appreciate that we have a president who has gone through many of these. That's why he's able to talk about, the numbers and the policies and the rest. I'm saying that there's precedent. So let's have confidence that there's a precedent. There will be a plan post, IMF. Yes, of course. Part of the measures are in the IMF program, and everybody knows that we are respecting
your friend. I don't know whether he's your best friend or not. Has filed a petition to the IMF, the former Minister of Finance, Dr. Amin Adam, raising concerns about the health of the central bank. Fast forward after August this year, he's raising serious concerns in that letter. What do you say to concerns that he's raising about
the time to have
the reporting numbers?
Excuse me. Yes, it's my friend. The time for us to have even launched a bigger appeal was when the deficit was 60, not 15. It's here in the financial statement.
Yeah.
Why didn't they? They were in the fund program.
Yeah.
But they were going to the fund program. And this was a consequence of this is one of the consequences of being forced into the fund program when we said that we were a bold nation, we were proud, No, I'm sorry. Many Ghanaians probably have forgotten. And so let me remind them that the situation here, is 4 times better than the 60 deficit. That we suffered in 2022.
There's no merit in the concerns he's raising. Maybe as a citizen of this country about the Bank of Ghana's position and its role as a lender of last resort.
George, please. I am saying that.
I'm just asking.
No.
As one of our finest accountants in this country.
Please, well. I'm responding. I'm responding to your, and I'm using a financial statement, right? And so you don't take one item on a financial statement and come to a conclusion. And I'm saying that, at the risk of repeating myself, that these negatives, there are positives, which has made the cash flow from operating activities a positive of 51. There are, which has made the net flows generated from operating, which is 42. The net flow from investing activities is a negative 35, which is what contributed to all. And overall, we are talking about cash and cash equivalents as at 31st December at the end of last year of 45. Positive, it's not negative. So I'm saying that if
Much
we
ado
would,
about nothing.
So I'm saying that if we would take our time to look at this and compare it, So I'm saying the time for petition, if there was a need for a petition, it's not when the situation, negative though, has improved 4 times.
When we come back, I'll ask you whether you look forward to and improve numbers in 2026 when it's come to the financials of the Bank of Ghana. Also, when we come back, we'll talk about the economy as well. There's an emission in town as well. What happens? There is still concerns about fiscal discipline when we complete this current program. This is PM Express Business Edition, engaging the former Minister of Finance and also the Presidential Advisor on the Economy, Honorable Seth Terkper, on Bank of Ghana's financial, the law's position, and the implication of this on the economy. This is PM Express Business Edition. Right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we look at Bank of Ghana's operating laws for last year and the impact on the larger economy, engaging the Presidential Advisor on the Economy, Honorable Seth Terkper. So, Honorable, do you look forward to, you are put on your accountant cap and you know these things and what happens. Do you look forward on the fiscal side to an improved position for 2026?
Overall, George, I already mentioned some positives. I'm saying that the cash flow...
But I'm saying that if you look forward to 2026, when we come to 2027,
yeah, we're on a path of recovery. Yes, we've been on the path of recovery. But of course, sometimes the reason you are cautious, is you do not control developments in the Middle East, right? Yes, and already the debates, Cabinet had to hold a special session, on crude oil price and what to do. Some short and long-term, policies were announced, for example, increasing the fleet of public transit. Even if things improve, supporting fuel and other. Yes, so the reason you don't want to be too categorical is that you're not in control. But remember that we have started a number of buffers and stabilizers, and His Excellency has mentioned, including even the debt repayment or sinking fund account, in his recent address, that these are things which we'll revisit. So I'm optimistic that the commitment at the higher level or the highest level is there. The VIP has also been talking about our social and other economic policies and the need for discipline. So I am convinced that the top, cabinet are committed to doing a correction. We have taken Ghanaians through so much that past and present governments. I mentioned some of them. That a correction is very important. Otherwise, we would never have confidence in our own markets, development of our own financial markets, which is very, very important. Government needs to borrow. Governments everywhere borrow. And therefore, there's a need for us to be careful that we don't fall, with a few of the countries, many of them war on the rest, which are able, to develop a decent market for themselves.
But one thing you mentioned was about certain things the government has implemented to try and cushion consumers in these times. And one of them is the fuel thing. Would you advise the president, looking at the situation, the Strait of Hormuz still not stabilizing, advise the president for this thing to be extended? It was just for about
no, but we think about it. We think about the short term and the medium term.
Would you advise the president that?
No, the president. The rates
extended.
No, I'm telling you that it's not just a single policy. At the time this announcement was being made, the more nuanced one, which didn't come out clearly, was the preparations being made. The president mentioned to rehabilitate TOR, process possibly our own fuel. The discussions and negotiations that were taking place with Nigeria, Dangote and others to see whether we could boost, the West African production. But again, more importantly, the preparation by BoG's and the energy sector led by MPA, to go back to the policy of increasing the number of fuel tanks and things that we have in order that would. So there are both immediate and short-term measures, which we know about, but there are the longer-term measures, and hopefully some of this will come out, when the minister sends his budget strategy document for stabilizing and moving the country to a more sustainable policy, going into the media review and, the capital budget post-IMF.
Should we look forward to a very interesting or a good report card come the mid-year review of the budget estimate? I mean, are we really even going to even review the estimate? But
well, we'll monitor the first quarter and the final, had just been, released. Analysis are going on. GRA, PFM, the chief director and others at the ministry. There's a steering committee which the minister, Greta was there, the deputy minister. So yes, I would say that if we added all these complementary structural, measures or reforms on our own, we should be able to do a good turnaround. Yes.
How is the IMF mission engagement going? I mean, from your side?
Fairly well. I'm not involved in the technical detail, but I know that it's going fairly well, and yeah. And I think our ability to, to go through, what is going on now globally, from tariffs to, fuel prices and the rest, suggests that there's something fundamentally good about some of the policies. But we are always on the lookout. After all, this is the owners of the budget buffers, stabilizers, and other things which were implemented, their repayments.
But for those who are a little bit skeptical and worried about we completing this program, do you think that their fears are justified at all when they are worried
there's no vacuum?
No, I'm just saying that
George, I think we should begin
because they cite the fact that we've been there 16th, yeah, there's 17. Then those same argument was made when we were completing the 16 program about the fact that we can manage things ourselves.
Well, I don't know why, the past government did not have a successor program, but we had said, had we extended it to go beyond the elections. Remember, it was President Mahama, and we negotiated even that program, with the homegrown, about 45%. About. 3/4 of the measures were internally generated. Remember the Senche and forum, whole forum, Takrady forum, and others. So I believe that it is possible. And again, let me remind you that in the State of the Nation address recently, His Excellency was mentioning some of those measures. And so I think we can be hopeful that he mentioned the need to have a successor program. I think what is left of Ghana, now that we have gone through all these bad experiences and the rest, and the painful ones, is for us as a nation, to begin to put a consensus in place for sustaining. After all, we have gone through several episodes, let me put it that way, several episodes, of taking corrective measures. Why can't we just put it together and adapt it for ourselves?
The president on record to us said that the first step was to stabilize the economy. After stability, then we should be looking at some expansion and all the rest. It is interesting that this stability, expansion or growing the economy, being heavy in capital expenditure, is tying into an election. And again, our past ghosts, what happened in an election year, is still giving some people worried about fiscal discipline in an election year.
George, I don't even know why we keep going back to this issue, particularly on your platform.
The past numbers,
excuse me.
But the past numbers indicates those who have this fear.
George, which past numbers?
The numbers about what has happened.
I said which election year?
Well, I use government as a whole. Forget about
but let's deal with facts.
Yeah.
Let's deal with facts. I'm saying that our debt in an election year was 57%. George, you know very well that our deficit was around 5%.
You're talking about DNDC.
The 2016, yes.
But I'm just saying, just count from last year.
Wait a minute.
What the funds
but I'm not accountable. I'm not accountable for.
Yeah, but I'm saying I'm looking at government as an entity.
But I'm giving you examples from a government that went into
so when it comes to the NDC, it is different. That's
the facts speak for itself.
Okay.
That's the point I'm making.
Okay.
I'm saying that the facts speak for itself. That we did not monitor the elections. That the deficit was decent. That the debt ratio was decent. That we were in the market. We did not default going into the market. Rather, we took the country out of HIPIC. Yes, I think they are there. And even when an attempt was made to move some of the figures, into footnotes and the rest, to give a bad impression. No. So I'm saying that I think it's about time we maybe went back to that experience and stopped using a broad brush, and saying that no government is capable of taking Ghana, out of, fund programs and implementing its own policies. Of course, you can implement your own policies, like the middle income and advanced countries. When the situation gets tough, you can go back to the fund, but you are going back to the fund with a program which you have devised for yourself. So I don't think we should be that despondent, because it had been attempted, right? Maybe overcrowded by the developments that went on. And so let's wait, as you said, you mentioned it, let's wait to see, what happens.
And these expansions or this growth will be done in the most disciplined way fiscally in an election. And I'm saying that...
Did we breach the IMF program? Yes. So there's a precedent. There's a precedent. We were in an IMF program. It was His Excellency that requested that the program should overlap, the election year back then. And we need to break that jinx. The fact that we are unable to manage on our own, I don't believe that, that should be the case. And like the Asian targets, a few African countries should come at the lions, and lead the country. It is showing that they are capable of, doing corrections on their own. Which correction we are doing now?
Indeed, we are capable of managing the correction and ensuring that there is fiscal discipline in an election year. Those are not my words. That's the words of the former Minister of Finance and the Presidential Advisor on the Economy, Honorable Seth Terkper. This is how we do the curtains down on PM Express Business. Just we looked at the Bank of Ghana's operating laws for last year and the impact on the larger economy. I know the debate will go on in your homes and your offices about whether there's still more for us to do as a government. It's been PM Express Business Edition. Have a great day.